Tyler Shough's money might be guaranteed, but his role is not. We got all that and a little bit of land yap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, New Orleans Saints get a big boost to their run game, signing Jonathan Bullard. There are no distractions anymore as training camp is ready to kick off, though there are still some things the Saints can get done if they'd like to. And we're going to kick everything off with a look at Tyler Shough's fully guaranteed second-round contract, what it all means, and how, of course, leave it to the New Orleans Saints to do something that no one else has ever done with that kind of deal. We got all that coming up for you on today's show. We appreciate you very much. Whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, where you can win up to $150 in bonus bets as a new customer. All you got to do is win your first $5 bet. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started today. Leave it to the New Orleans Saints, even in unprecedented times when it comes to NFL contracts, to still find a way to just simply be different. One of my favorite things about covering this team is the way that they approach contracts, the salary cap, everything. They just do everything so uniquely, so differently and everything. It drives a lot of people crazy. I love every second of it. I love getting to talk about it. And this is just the newest fold. Remember, the Saints were one of the first teams ever to restructure a fifth-year option. They, were the master of void years for a while, building in and utilizing roster bonuses as a means of restructure points to where you're restructuring already guaranteed money, so on and so forth. Like, they've done so many different innovative things. And of course, now, in a landscape where everything was shifting around the NFL, around these NFL second-round picks, fully guaranteed deals for picks 33, 34, 35, 37, 38, 39, and now pick 40, Tyler Shough, he gets his fully guaranteed second-round contract, just like we kind of figured that he would, right? The difference between getting a fully guaranteed contract and not getting a fully guaranteed contract was not $10.7 million guaranteed or zero. It was always more like a difference of a few $100,000. It was never, and look, a few $100,000 to you and me. Well, I don't know you. You might be balling. I don't know. I'm not. A few $100,000 to me, not that big. I mean, is a massive deal. A few $100,000 when it comes to an NFL contract, not that big of a deal at all. So while this fully guaranteed contract is indeed guaranteed, it doesn't put the New Orleans Saints in a situation to where they have to start Tyler Shough week one, that they have to roll with him throughout his entire rookie contract or anything like that. That still has to be earned. If Tyler Shough is out there week one, it's because he earned his opportunity to be out there week one. If Spencer Rattler is out there week one, it's because he earned his opportunity to be out there week one. Like, there's no doubt about that, right? Like, I think that is an important thing to understand. Tyler Shough will eventually be on the field for New Orleans. I believe that it's probably going to be week one because of the draft status, because of the pressure to get him out there, because he's, mature enough and probably ready enough to be out there, all those other things. But he's got to outperform Spencer Rattler on the way, which is not going to be an easy task because Spencer Rattler looked so good during OTAs and mandatory minicamps that I think he's going to continue that after 6 weeks of continued work going into training camp. But nothing is given. Everything has to be earned in this situation. The one thing that you can look at, though, as a given, is that the Saints are going to be creative and that they're going to find some way to do something that no one's ever done before on a contract. And this is now the latest entry to that point. So yes, Tyler Shough gets a fully guaranteed contract. However, it also includes roster bonuses. Now, the roster bonus structure is very much like that of a first round draft pick. Roster bonuses typically, it's guaranteed money, but it's contingent upon a player being on a roster at a kind of designated target date. These work a little bit differently sometimes. Sometimes it's like working a year ahead. So for instance, your 2027 salary or roster bonus becomes guaranteed when you're on the roster the 5th day of the 2026 league year. So being on the roster in 2026 allows you to have a roster bonus that becomes guaranteed in 2027. However, we also see sometimes these situations where roster bonuses kick in for the present year. So if you're on the roster the 5th day of the league year or a week before training camp, whatever it might be, then that roster bonus will kick in for that year. So if you're on the roster 1 week before training camp in 2026, your 2026 roster bonus kicks in. This is some stuff that we've seen with, I think Hunter Renfrow had something like this. That was one of the reasons why people were talking about there being a deadline to trade him effectively. That was about, trying to get him traded before, that roster bonus kicked in and became guaranteed and all those other things. Derek Carr had something similar on his deal, some stuff a year ahead, some stuff the year of. And so you've seen this before, right? This isn't like completely new, but it's the first time we've ever seen a second round rookie get a contract like this. So I'll be really, really intrigued to read over kind of what the structure of the deal is once those numbers and figures become publicly available. But it's just another interesting thing that the Saints have found a way to do. And effectively, this finishes the conversation around the Tyler Shough 2025 will he, won't he when it came to training camp, right? Like I've said before, I would never, ever, 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 if I'm a player, take the training camp field without a contract signed. Like during mandatory mini camps and during OTAs, we were getting like participation payments and all these other things. Sure, fine. But going into training camp, don't risk that injury. And so now you don't have to worry about that, right? Tyler Shough is on his contract. He is on that fully guaranteed deal of $10.8 million, and he'll be there ready to go tomorrow when the players report, and then be on the field on Wednesday when the players actually take the field to get started, right, in earnest. And that's the first of the Saints' 11 training camp days here in Louisiana, 9 of which are open to the public. If you don't have your tickets to go get your tickets so that you can go. And then, of course, they'll go to Irvine for a little bit over a week. Here's the thing, though, that I want to be really, really sure that I drive home before we move on to kind of our next piece of this, which is the distraction side of it all, or lack thereof now. I think that the thing that sometimes gets misconstrued is that because Tyler Shough has a fully guaranteed deal, that the Saints' options at quarterback are now closed. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. The case around this is that it's a $10.7 million contract over the course of 4 years, $10.8 million contract over the course of 4 years. That's a 2.8 per year deal. This is the same team that signed Teddy Bridgewater to a fully guaranteed $7.25 million contract to be the backup. This is the same team that paid $3.3 million last year for Jameis Winston, who is not on their roster. And so this idea that, Tyler Shough got this fully guaranteed deal, that means that everything is all said and done. That's not going to be the case for Tyler Shough. There's still a lot to earn, and there's a lot that he's ready to earn as well. Okay, but here's the good thing. The Saints got this out of the way, which means no distractions going into camp. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Summer sports is in full swing. WNBA action will return very quickly right after the All-Star break. MLB, same thing as that MLB action continues to heat up on the way to the postseason. High-stakes soccer action is underway, and FanDuel is the best way to make all of that exciting stuff even more exciting because you can get in on all of the action while all your friends are out there getting sunburnt at the beach or something like that. It is a ton of fun over at FanDuel in terms of what you can find. And right now, if you're a new customer, new customers can put down $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's all you got to do. Then you can take that $150 and use it on a bunch of different stuff. New daily promotions that you can get in on. There's same game parlays as well as live betting. You can take the over under for the Saints win total. So for new customers, put down $5 for your first bet. If you win that, $150 in bonus bets coming your way. Open up the FanDuel app today or head over to FanDuel.com to get started. This is an ad by BetterHelp. Did you know that 61% of the global workforce is reporting higher than usual workplace stress? It's a tricky, tricky world. It's a tricky, tricky thing to balance as well. There are some things you can do. get outside for a little while, add some movement to your day, but also just talking to somebody about the things that are weighing you down can help so much. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. I've been really transparent about my therapy journey, and a big part of my therapy journey has been work, the balance of work, work-life balance, all those other things, from learning some positive coping skills to just simply fitting my therapy sessions into a day, which the online part of this helps with so much. BetterHelp has been awesome. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. So unwind from work with BetterHelp. And our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, family. Tyler Shough's fully guaranteed deal isn't just good for Tyler Shough. It's good for the New Orleans Saints that the deal got done. We appreciate you very much for being here with us for another episode of Locked On Saints. Remember, we continue here every single Monday through Friday and then some, especially as training camp goes on. I'll tell you a little bit about my plans for training camp later on in the show here. So for New Orleans, though, going into training camp, this is a major move for them. Not because they signed a quarterback to a fully guaranteed deal. Again, it's just over, it's around $11 million. It's less than $11 million over the course of the lifespan of the contract, so on and so forth. Like, we're not talking about like, oh, this is a major signing where the Saints just spent $150 million on another quarterback or something like that. Like, we're still talking about rookie deals here. But the reason why this is such a big deal for New Orleans is because it's out of the way. It's done. It's finished. And that's a good thing for New Orleans, right? This whole second round pick conundrum is going to get worse and worse and worse over the course of the next few years. Like, the next CBA doesn't go up for negotiations until 2031. And so unless the NFL really wants to push that 18th game, then they're probably not going to go back to the drawing table on certain things until 2031. And this is something that we've watched going on for a while, right? It took a while for Alontae Taylor to sign his second round contract because the guarantee negotiation. Same thing for Kool-Aid McKinstry. Same thing for second round picks all over the NFL. That's why I was so adamant about, like, stop blaming this on Tyler Shough. This is not a Tyler Shough desire. This is not a Tyler Shough situation. This is an NFL second round pick situation. But it's one that could have caused individual players to hold out. We saw it. Trey Harris, the wide receiver from the Los Angeles Chargers, didn't go to training camp because he didn't have a contract. The right move. That's the right thing to do. And so that could have ended up being the case with Tyler Shough, but I'm not going to harp on that anymore because the point is that's not going to happen. It's all done. It's a good thing, right? So the Saints can now walk into training camp with a massive quarterback battle about to be underway, with other battles all around the team. Who's going to be the starting cornerback opposite Kool-Aid McKinstry over on the outside? Who's going to step up at wide receiver? Who's going to be that running back behind Alvin Kamara? Will Trevor Penning work out on the inside and the interior? And what does the depth look like at offensive line? Who's going to make the roster on the defensive line, which we're going to discuss a little bit here in a moment? Like, there's so much going on during this training camp. And oh, by the way, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new special teams coordinator, new position coaches, new offense, new defense, new schemes, new philosophies, new identity, right? So there's a lot for the New Orleans Saints to figure out over the course of training camp, which they've all been working at, since they've all been in the building. It's not like those things don't really start to hash themselves out until training camp, but there is something different about running full team drills and getting a feel of what your offense and your defense really feel like with all 10 of your teammates out on the field, right? So like, there's a really, really big sort of focus that's got to really go to the field here for New Orleans. And so not having your rookie quarterback, potential starting quarterback out there and available to get ready for that 2025 season whenever he does hit the field, that could have been a little bit of a distraction. And it would have been a distraction across the entire NFL had teams just not started to say, okay, this is what we're doing. You know what I mean? And so this is a good thing for New Orleans, that this is all said and done. It's a good thing for players. I'm always pro player. It's a good thing for players that this is happening too. But most of all, it's kind of just good that it's over and that it's all taken care of. And now the Saints can go into camp with no distractions. Now, there are still things that they can do, right? The Chris Olave extension conversation, I think, is dead in the water at this point during this offseason. Garrett Wilson, his teammate, drafted one selection ahead of him. Nick Underhill did a great job with 17 game stats and 17 game averages, and they're pretty much kind of the same player in that way, although you look at the fact that Chris Olave dealt with a lot of injuries last year and Garrett Wilson has not. He's had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons over in New York. Chris Olave had 2 straight. He probably would have had a 3rd straight were it not for the injuries and the concussions. And so I think what you're looking at now is now that Garrett Wilson got that deal, 4 years, $130 million, it's $32.5 million per year, that it's unlikely that the New Orleans Saints and Chris Olave's team go to the negotiating table this offseason to try to hash out an extension. In my opinion, it's not the time to do it, because at this point, you're not paying for you're paying the going rate, right? Like, this is one of the things we talk about with contracts all the time. You don't necessarily have to be better than or worse than a player to get a better contract or a worse contract than a player. A lot of times, it just comes down to the timing. And I think the Saints and Chris Olave have a lot of question marks to figure out. Like, you're going to be able to stay on the field. How's the head injuries, all those other things? Like, are you able to curb that and then get out and stay out on the field in 2025? Or like, are you in danger? Like, there's a lot of valid questions here, right? And so for New Orleans, this is really about like, okay, not going to go to the drawing table or the negotiating table rather, here in 2025. Let's see how 2025 goes. And then maybe they can go to that negotiating table after 2025. Chris Olave is on his 5th-year option for 2026. So you could also wait until after that if they wanted to. It just makes it so that you don't have to rush for this. So it's kind of another distraction that could have been that's now probably not going to be. The Saints could look to extend other players. I've been a strong advocate for the idea of extending Alontae Taylor. Do it this year before he balls out in 2025. But Alontae Taylor and his team might say, nope, betting on ourselves, going to go out there in 2025, going to perform in this Brandon Staley defense and this new star position, this really, really well-tailored fit for me. I'm going to go out there and do that. And then we'll talk about a contract negotiation. Certainly something that they can do, but not a distraction, right? That could be something that could be worked on quietly off to the side. Alontae Taylor's on the team. He's not going anywhere. He's not going to hold out. He loves the game. He's going to play the game of football. There would be no issue from Alontae Taylor if a contract negotiation was also going on the other side, much like Pete Werner's extension last year, to where it wasn't heard about. Like, the contract talks and all that stuff were not even talked about until the deal was done. I feel like you would have a similar situation here with Alontae Taylor. And there are other players they can kind of go down the road with and take a look at extensions and everything, kind of 1-year deals here, there, and the other and stuff like that. But I just don't expect the Saints to go that way. So now their entire next few weeks really gets dedicated to figuring out their roster, right? And that means not just thinking about how to go from the 90-man roster to the 53-man roster, but cycling some players off your 90-man roster, bringing some players onto your 90-man roster, getting a look at a bunch of different players. Because a lot of times, like, you bring players on in, June, July, or July, August during training camp, and then they don't make the 53-man roster. But week 10, when you need somebody at that position, that's the player that probably gets the phone call. So it's an opportunity to do all that. And then after that, then outside of that, it's all about getting ready for the season. And so for the Saints, in a really, really good position here to have all this stuff kind of out of the way, especially the Tyler Shough situation, or not situation. It's not really Tyler Shough situation, but the second round situation, getting that out of the way. And then now they could just focus on training camp and doing what it is they got to do to get ready for the 2025 NFL season. And part of doing that is also trying to improve a little bit of what's going on over the defensive side, particularly on the run game or in the run game. And thanks to Jonathan Bullard, Saints could take a step forward. We got all that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Rougiette. Rougiette is, let's do it this way. Maybe you've heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've actually tried them before. Well, if that didn't necessarily work out for you, Rougiette Ready is what I'd like to introduce you to. It is a 3-in-1 treatment that dissolves under your tongue, kicks in super fast as well, like 15 minutes on average, much better than the hours it can take on the pill. I know you're excited about training camp, but it's easy to get excited about other stuff too. Rougiette Ready just makes it a little bit easier to get excited. You know what I'm saying? So head over to rougietteready.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL. Promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing review. Please see the Rougiette website for full safety information. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints might be able to now see their run defense take some positive steps forward in 2025. And while, of course, the trade for Devon Godshaw at the beginning of the offseason is a big part of that, as well as the investment in Vernon Broughton in this year's NFL draft, the Saints did not stop there, and they have finally, and I'm saying finally because I mean finally, signed defensive lineman Jonathan Bullard, the 9-year veteran going into his 10th year. I think is a really solid addition for New Orleans, and should he make the roster, could absolutely help them out big time when it comes to the run game. That is his bread and butter, stopping the run. The New Orleans Saints, of course, finished number 31 in the NFL last season in run defense. We've talked about that to endless dismay here on the show, why that was challenging, what went wrong, all these other things, how they need to fix it, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing. This is how you fix it. You bring in players that are really good at stopping the run, and you add them to a roster that wasn't so good at stopping the run or wasn't so effective in stopping the run. At 6'3", 290 pounds, we're talking about a guy that's really, really versatile. He can move all around the defensive line, can play all the way down to, one tech, kind of being that three tech pass rusher as well, can play the 2-eye, can move outside and be kind of this one. So basically what I'm saying is he can play anywhere from like defensive tackle closest to center all the way out to like defensive end just inside the offensive tackle, right? Kind of that 5 tech is what it's called in that case. And so a guy that can move around like this is kind of reminiscent of what the Saints had in Tano Passanio last year. Somebody that can move around, play both inside and out, all those other things, but now gives you somebody that instead of being a really good pass rusher, which Tano Passanio absolutely was, gives you somebody that's maybe a little bit stronger in the run game. 221 career tackles combined over the course of his career. 28 of those were for a loss. He's also added 6.5 sacks. And again, for an interior defensive lineman, I know that Brian Brzee just had a 7.5 sack season and led the team in sacks and all those other things. You'd be a pass rushing defensive tackle like Brian Brzee, like Nathan Shepard, but there are also the run stopping types, and Bullard checks the run stopping type bag, or box rather. And in his bag, that's where it is that he's able to operate. Now, the Saints have a lot of defensive linemen on the roster, 16, now 17 defensive linemen on the roster. They're going to have some kind of corresponding move along with this signing. That could be moving somebody to an injury list, which happens as teams get into, players reporting and all that. You see a bunch of guys go to like physically unable to perform and non-football injury and all these other things because physicals happen and then they need to get cleared for other stuff. And it takes them a little while before they're able to do that, blah, blah, blah. So we see things like this all the time, but it could also be that somebody gets moved on from, somebody gets cut, somebody gets waived, whatever it might be. And we've seen some of those adjustments over the course of this offseason so far. And again, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to see the Saints cycle around a little bit of that 90-man roster, get a look at as many players as they can. But I think Jonathan Bullard is more than just hey, if Jonathan Bullard works out, he's somebody that the Saints can call down the road. I think if Jonathan Bullard works out, he challenges to make the roster or at least be a veteran practice squad guy that sees playing time. Like where it is that he thrives is exactly what it is that the Saints need. And by the way, durability means something in the NFL, of course. And out of his 9 seasons, he's played 12 or more games 6 times, including the last 2 years where he appeared in all 17 games. And by the way, throughout his 9-year NFL career, he's never missed more than 3 tackles in a season. Doesn't matter if he played single-digit games or if he played all 17 like he has in each of the last 2 seasons, has never missed more than 3 tackles in a single season. That's another area where the Saints struggled quite a bit last year, was or really not just quite a bit last year, right? Like tackling has been a little bit of an issue for New Orleans over the course of the past few years. The Saints were number 4 in the NFL last year with 129 missed tackles. That's according to Pro Football Reference's advanced defensive stat tracking. And so they were 27th against the pass. They were 30th in total defense. They were 31st against the run. I mean, this was a defense that struggled last year. And so getting as many players that could potentially come in and help you out, I think makes a lot of sense for New Orleans. So I love the addition of Jonathan Bullard. Where does he fit in? Well, he could be a guy that ends up playing as one of those 3 interior defensive linemen. So could play nose tackle, but probably I see him a little bit more as a 5 tech kind of defensive end, like a 3-4 defensive end. So he could be a good partner to Brian Brzee. or on rundowns be in place of Brian Brzee, and Brian Brzee gets to focus a little bit more on his pass rushing ability, right? On pass rushing downs. And so those are kind of the different ways that you can make all of this work. But, the bottom line is that absolutely Jonathan Bullard could earn a role in this New Orleans Saints defense. So looking forward to seeing him on the field, looking forward to seeing what the corresponding move might end up being by the time that this is all said and done as well. But with training camp right around the corner, I thought that this was a solid addition for New Orleans. All right. Speaking of training camp, I want to tell you about my plans for training camp so you know when to expect content. So you're going to get your usual Monday through Friday shows no matter what. Saturday and Sunday, if the Saints practice, there will be a show. If there is a practice on a weekday, you will get 2 shows a day. Monday and Thursday in the evening around 9 p.m. Central Time, you'll get the squad show as the second show of the day. But on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday, if the Saints practice, there'll also be a live second show from me just as soon as I get home and I'm comfortable and have all my writing done and everything like that. So the time will vary on those, but I'll try to do those as early as possible. But I don't know, maybe I'll just try to keep everything to 9 p.m. just so that we all get into a rhythm together and everything like that. But in any case, lots of stuff coming up for training camp. If there's not a training camp practice on a weekday, you still get 1 show a day, no matter what. If there's not a training camp practice on a Saturday or Sunday, I'm taking a day off. All right. I'm taking a day off. In that case, you won't get a show on those days until I get itchy and then I end up doing a show anyway. All right. We appreciate you very much. Tomorrow, previewing the first media availability of training camp. That's what we're going to dive into. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know what the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.